My name's Caroline Beckett. I'm Vicar of Brightlingsea, and I'm getting very sick of being in my living room.
I'm Andy Griffiths. I coordinate training for the Diocese of Chelmsford. I have altogether too much hair. And together we are
We are at a distance, rethinking
Christian leadership. So we're having a series of conversations about Christian leadership as community organising. And so far, we've said that community organising is a tradition, a set of rules, a set of tools rather, a rule and a process.
And so we've started to chat through what that process looks like. And conversations 4 and 5 were about the first stage, which is organising, or forming a relational culture, or team building, or community building. And conversations 6 and 7 were about listening, which is the second stage.
So now we've reached the third stage, and the third stage is planning. Now, let's be honest, community organising is kind of in two minds about planning. One of the leading lights of community organising is Ernesto Cortes Jr., and he says it's a paradox. How is it that community organising is negative about planning, yet includes planning in its 5 steps?
Well, that doesn't sound like a paradox, it sounds like a complete contradiction.
Yeah, but Cortes resolves the contradiction by distinguishing planning with a capital P, the kind of planning community organising doesn't like, which is done from above and championed by one single leader and comprehensive, from planning with a small p, the kind of planning that community organising does like.
Okay, but he was writing a book, not trying to produce a podcast. So for our purposes, perhaps we can talk about heroic planning, the capital P planning as the bad kind, and maybe local planning as the good kind, the little p, small p planning.
Yeah, let's do that. In which case, heroic planning is what happens when one leader or one powerful figure or the powers that be have a plan and get local people to carry it out. Whereas local planning, the good kind, is simply the middle stage between listening to the community and action.
So in local planning, stories are turned into bite-sized, winnable issues. So problems lead to conferences and issues lead to action, says Matthew Bolton. And remember, the listening stage wasn't just about hearing what's wrong, it's about hearing the gifts of a community and the gifts of a congregation as well, and identifying the leaders, the natural leaders in those groups. And in local planning, the local leaders, even if some of them are very new to this leading thing, take the stories, find the issues, appreciate the gifts local people bring, and then make a plan for action.
Cortes uses the Greek word metis to mean, quote, local knowledge gained through incremental learning and constant feedback and evaluation. And he claims that it's metis that makes the difference between heroic plans and local plans. Another writer, Bretherton, says local plans should be prudential and non-ideological.
So is this about planning inside the church or outside it?
So it's definitely about both kinds of planning. Remember, Caroline and I are arguing for 50-50 Christian leaders. The idea that a Christian leader, whether they're a vicar or a lay minister or a warden or a curate or an authorised preacher or someone that doesn't have a job title, should be spending about half of their ministerial energy on congregational development. That's stuff that happens inside the church, and about half on stuff that happens outside the gathered church, like community action and evangelism and building an alliance for the common good. That's true for organising in general. It's internal and external. It's true for the first stage, organising or building teams or building a community. That's internal and external. And it's true for listening, internal and external. So it's no surprise to discover that that's true for planning too. Externally, Christian leaders will have been listening with their partners to what the local community cares about and appreciating the gifts the local community brings. Glass half full, not glass half empty. And now the leaders that have emerged will get together and move from stories to issues and plan action. That's external, but internally as well, Christian leaders will have been double listening to God and to the people and identifying leaders and gifts so the teams can do some local planning inside the church. So Caroline, how does any of that work at Brightlingsea?
So it works on all sorts of levels. So internally, we've got some natural leaders emerging in lockdown, people who are being proactive, taking the initiative, making contact with others, keeping networks of contacts going. And also, interestingly, in liturgy and in the service we do a Zoom service. And although it's a bit of a cacophony of voices sometimes, actually what it does allow for is for the service to be divided up. And I've been playing with people from the get-go. It needs to be something that they can run themselves, because if I end up getting COVID-19, they're going to have to do this because I won't be able to. So we've got to the stage where they can run it themselves. They don't really need me. I'm largely ornamental. And they are more than capable of conducting the service themselves, which is a brilliant place to be. And actually, for some people, that doesn't represent a great change. For other people, that represents a bit of a movement. And I'm hoping that post-lockdown, those same people will want to be involved in the same things at the same level as they are virtually.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of easier to do something on a small scale first and then to scale it up. In terms of the community, I've been doing a fair bit of listening in the community and what's on people's minds and what's bothering them. One of the things that's really been bothering those who are bereaved and those who are concerned about that is the lack of any kind of physical connection or memorial or anything like that. So listening to the families of those whose funerals I've been taking, that's been really, really tough, because they're not all church families, and therefore they don't have all the natural mechanisms in place that church families do for support, and the natural go-to places and a particular understanding of the afterlife. So we've been giving out some lovely and fully sterilizable rainbow crystal hanging charms, so that you hang it in your window and it throws rainbows around your room, because the rainbow has become the popular symbol of hope at this time. And it's been a Christian symbol of hope for a very long time. So we're giving those to families because they can be safely given and safely sanitized, as something that they can hold on to until they're able to have the memorial service. And the other thing that we're doing is there was a big grief in the community about not being able to celebrate VE Day, because obviously in lockdown, none of the ceremonial that's been planned, that people have poured their hearts into for the 75th anniversary, can happen. And in a place like Brightlingsea, where the civic life is massive, that's a huge blow to people. And I had a couple of big events planned that I've had to cancel and various things. So what I've done is working with the various organisations in town, and also various radio, TV schedules and plans that have cropped up on social media and sort of things that have been doing the rounds. I've put together a timetable for the whole day of what's happening when, what people are doing when, everything from the times we can't speak of, which are the times that I and the council officials are going to go and lay wreaths alone, unwitnessed, because we can't publish the time because we can't encourage a gathering, through to 11 o'clock, we're all going to stand on our doorsteps and have 2 minutes silence, and then we're going to bang and holler and make a din and sing the national anthem. And then, there's going to be, people are going to have scones and cream and jam in their gardens and wave at each other. We've distributed templates on social media for bunting, and we've involved the people who are not online, who can't access all this riches of resources online, because we've taken the membership lists of the Royal Naval and the British Legion, because I'm chaplain of both, and I've written them a chaplain's letter and enclosed a paper version of the timetable and a poster they can put up in their windows. And we've got some folks who are sort of responsible for their street or their area, who are going out and taking pictures so that we can compile a video montage of what Brightlingsea done to celebrate and to remember.
That sounds fantastic. And none of it would be possible if this was a matter of you or even the church doing all the planning for Brightlingsea, not least because why would everyone else get involved? It takes quite an array of leaders and partners and different sort of thinkers who are planning together, I guess.
Well, all I've done is collate the various things that people have done, have conversations with these various groups and say, let's put this all together, which is a lot more restful as a way of doing things than saying, oh, I've got to fill an entire day with activities. And would have been completely unnecessary because the Legion are really prepared, and the Royal Naval were really prepared. They had their idea, the Legion had their idea. The Facebook groups had their idea, the homeschooling network has got stuff. So it's just a question of connecting it together, which you can do because if you're listening to all those groups, you hear it all. And then you can just pull it together for people. And then those who aren't listening to all those groups know what's going on and what they can take part in.
Fantastic. Have you got a poem?
I do have a poem. I usually do have a poem. I've got to find it now. Bear with me. Here we go. So this is actually, it's a poem about listening. Because that's what I've been doing a lot of. Speak to me, Lord. Oh, will that woman never shut up, going on and on? Yes, I know it's unfair, but we're all sick of hearing it. Speak to me, Lord. Turn that telly down. The news is all grim. Let's have something cheerful. Speak to me, Lord. I've had nothing all day but the nattering in queues and the battering of emails and the chattering of children. Speak to me, Lord. My ears have been bent by the vague meanderings of old men and stories I've heard 100 versions of. Speak to me, Lord. My other half has been rambling at me about our anniversary and my friends about a party and holidays. Speak to me, Lord. I want to hear from you. Why are you silent when I call out to you? I spoke to you all day, in the voices of justice and mercy, of curiosity, faith and hope, of wisdom and love. You were not listening then. Are you really listening now?
Thank you so much. For those of you watching, I know some people are listening on podcast, don't worry, you're not missing much, but for those watching on YouTube, I put a piece of paper up on screen, and this is just a way of presenting one of the tools for planning that community organizing uses, and it's called a power analysis. Caroline, can you tell us?
So I can see, what I can see is a single piece of paper, and there's a little sort of post-it that can move around, and at the top it says most powerful, and at the bottom it says least powerful, and on the right it says least motivated, and on the left it says most motivated. So this does work best when the team has already agreed on one specific key objective. So let's say the team has agreed that the big issue it's dealing with is the mold in a certain tower block.
Okay.
So if it's mold, yeah.
Mold, okay.
The names of key institutions or individuals in the community are written on small cards. And then the participants position them on the large sheet. So the nearer the top of the sheet the cards are placed, the more power the individual or actor has with respect to the objective. And the nearer to the left-hand side of the sheet the card is placed, the more strongly that institution or individual is likely to support the desired change.
So let's say it's mold in a tower block. I guess the sort of institutions and people that we're going to put on cards are things like kind of environmental health, and maybe the police are interested, maybe not, I don't know. Maybe the local MP, certainly the landlords and the tenants, and there could be a residents association.
Yeah, and maybe other local health services, maybe the food bank, possibly the school where the children go and they're coughing and spluttering or spending a lot of time off sick.
And it's not that any of these people are in favor of mold. That's not what we're saying. I mean, the point is, well, do you remember right back when we were talking about the tradition of community organizing, we quoted Barack Obama, who talked about the 3 premises of community organizing. And he said that the first premise is there is no lack of solutions, there is simply a lack of power to put those solutions into action.
Yeah, so it's not that any one of those groups is in favor of mold, but the mold is still there. So on this sheet of paper, we've got all the interested parties. And the question is, how can we move the parties on the left of our bit of paper upwards? That is, how can we get those most concerned with solving this issue more power? And then how can we move the parties at the top leftwards? That is, get them to take action about the mold. So it's about motivating those who are in power. And one of the ways we would do that, I guess, is through public storytelling. And this is a community organising tool that we use, but that's stage 4, and I don't want to borrow from later podcasts. So for the moment, we just want to introduce that power analysis as a tool. And though the example of a tower block with mould is an external one about the common good rather than the congregational development, this tool is quite useful inside the church as well.
Yeah, so I've used this tool with lay ministers who were telling me that their clergy weren't giving them opportunities to preach. And we did exactly that process. It's not mold, but the same tools can work. Except, Caroline, I'll be honest with you, I spent most of my time as a Christian being quite uncomfortable about power. I flinch slightly that we're even having to discuss it.
Yes, I think a lot of Christians feel like that. And in our next episode, we'll talk a little bit more about power, because there are different ways of looking at power and what power might mean and what power might be in different contexts. And a lot of our instinctive flinch from power is because we actually have an instinctive negative view of power. And that's something that community organising will have a little poke at and a little challenge, because community organising views power quite differently. So thank you for listening. And you can get in touch with us. I'm at revcarolinebeckett@gmail.com.
And I'm at randomlyandy@live.com.
And we've been At a Distance, rethinking
Christian leadership.